Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Axel Dean and today I'll be presenting about Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon Bonaparte is a well-known French leader or emperor serving from 1804 to 1815. He is well known for his successful military campaigns within Europe, reaching all the way from Moscow all the way into the southern Spanish Iberian Peninsula. He was successful in even dismantling the Holy Roman Empire, uniting Italian states and spreading the seeds of what would be called nationalism throughout Europe. He also introduced the continental system in an attempt to embargo the British entirely from mainland Europe, essentially making so that the British would surrender. However, despite his victories, eventually the continental system would eventually lead to its downfall, as the continental system eventually led to Russia, one of former enemies of Napoleon, and now allies of Napoleon, eventually wanted to trade with Britain, as economic ties and other stuff eventually led to Russia wanting to trade with Britain again to reopen their economy. However, Napoleon didn't want Russia to open their economy, as opening their economy to Britain would allow dangerous attempts, and so Napoleon mobilized an army not seen at that time of nearly 600,000 men marching to Russia. This massive force for the time managed to reach all the way to Moscow, until eventually, with growing issues from weather issues and supply issues, eventually led to the large retreat famously known as Napoleon's Great Retreat from Russia. Here, several thousands of the force of the men in that army led to die of freezing conditions and harsh conditions of the Russian steppe. Well, they were also subjected to summer of the Russian woodlands, and with the tensions growing and fears of the Russian Cossacks, it eventually led to Napoleon fleeing all the way back to where he started, Poland. This led to multiple of his armies and forces being encircled and subsequently destroyed, leading to only around a quarter of his forces even surviving the campaign. This was not his only unsuccessful campaign, as after he instated his brother Joseph to the Spanish throne, Portuguese and Spanish rebels rebelled against his rule. Seeing as he was forcibly installed by Napoleon himself, this saw the first ever use of guerrilla warfare, supported by the British generals and most famously Wellington. It was subsequently called the Peninsular War. Napoleon also led a campaign to Egypt, famously being near the pyramids and other stuff. He also led several military reforms and other reformations throughout Europe, eventually creating the Code of the French, one of the first and most revolutionary civil rights codes in history. He also instated several nationalistic and republican ideas throughout Europe, eventually creating multiple states within reform shapes. Napoleon's ideas would forever last till now, with his tactics being studied and altered. However, despite this, when Napoleon was pushed all the way back to France, he fought to the end until he eventually lost in 1814. However, he was sent to an island in Italy. However, in there he managed to grab a ship and went back to. And on 22nd of June, he managed to go back to France, and seeing this, the newly reinstated Bourbon king sent a force of former Napoleon soldiers against them. However, the force, knowing Napoleon, recognizing him, did not attack, and however, they joined him. eventually leading to the Bourbon king being forced all the way to flee to Belgium. Now, with Napoleon reinstated, he went in a campaign, knowing that the British and most likely Prussia would intervene. He aimed to defeat the force within Belgium and lead an attack to Germany. However, this would see the famous Battle of Waterloo, when Napoleon was famously defeated by the forces of General Wellington and and famous Prussian leader or Prussian general Blucher, where where Napoleon famously lost the battle. However, this would not last. This would not last. Napoleon continued to fight on. However, despite his best attempts, Napoleon was eventually defeated. When he was defeated, Napoleon asked the British and begged them to give him a home near London. However, the British did not accept, as Napoleon was seen as a public enemy. And when Napoleon took power in France, instead of declaring war on France, Napoleon, the British declared war on Napoleon himself. They did not declare war on France, they declared war on Napoleon himself, thus leading to him being sent to a faraway island in Africa, also known as St. Helena. In St. Helena, he'd be popularly known as writing poems and other quotes, where he'd be known as saying multiple quotes and quickly saw his long and last hours of life being in total depression, as what was once Europe's greatest leader and was once Europe's greatest conqueror eventually led and was exiled to a puny island in Africa. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name was Axel D, and that was my presentation on Napoleon Bonaparte.